This is a short introduction or first lecture to talk about your midterm essay. If you have any questions or if anything is not clear, send me emails or send me comments. Come to my office hours and I will publish more essays if I think it's necessary. The first essay is meant to be a possible stepping stone you can use because by the end of this class, I want you to have a final essay, and your final essay can incorporate the work you've done for the first essay. But I want you to have 10 pages or more, and I know it's hard to write 10 pages all at once. So the first essay is supposed to help you by giving you a good something you can use as a good beginning for your next essay, or maybe it becomes the part of the middle of your essay as some evidence that you're going to add on to with more. And the part of the reason is just for my own interest. I would like you to all be able to submit this essay. I'm going to be if everything continues as normal in these times. I for many years have been on the judging committee for a Donner Essay Prize, which awards $300 to a good essay, undergraduate essay on a topic in religious studies. And I would love to be able to award it to one of my students. So I would love for you to work hard and create a good essay that you're proud of and that you can submit to this award. One of the issues I have at the outset is with sources. If you want to use extensively draw from sources outside of these textbooks, this McCullough book and the Sana book, I would suggest you run them by Chris or myself. Send a short email just with your sources and the places you're going to go, because there's higher quality and poorer quality sources. No matter what outside sources you use, I would like one of your significant sources to be these books. I want this essay partly to prove to me that you can really engage this book at a high level. You engage it first with the reflection paper, maybe a little bit deeper with the questions. When I ask you, you know you're going to have to talk to me on Tuesday in our lectures. And then even deeper level, I want you to show some mastery, that you can use this book to show evidence of your being able to use complex data, the data that's in this book, to make a persuasive argument. So you'll see the way I've set up the prompts, all of them, neither of them kind of tip the hand. Neither of them show you what you should be thinking. All of them make it open to you to prove to me something that's not obvious either way, to prove that your way is right. And if you persuade me by the end of your essay, I will think that that's a good essay. That's an A. And Chris and I will be grading accordingly. That you persuade us by using evidence. You persuade us by using the English language as well as you can to write this essay and to engage with difficult texts. So a simplistic essay will not convince us if you just say, "Well, Christianity is not modern. Look, it tries to believe in God, and who can believe in God in a modern world of science?" That is not convincing because you have not really engaged the stronger counter arguments. You have not really thought about it and shown that you can get into the difficulties of the text. That's too simplistic, right? So I want you to think about counter arguments. I want you to create the strongest version of opponent and weave it into this essay and talk about your differences of opinion and why you think, despite these counter arguments, despite the fact that Christians might be able to create a very convincing idea of a modern belief system, why you still think it's not modern. So a better version of this, for instance, might be that you set up a good, strong argument. You set up the best possible argument of why a Christian could argue that Christianity is a modern religion, that it fits with the Enlightenment, and then you destabilize it, then you cause problems to it, and you try to overturn it. So this is actually one of the things I'll talk about in this first lecture, or in this lecture, is how I want you to write your first paragraphs. I want you to write your first paragraphs using this kind of model called stasis, destabilization, and then your thesis. So your thesis will be at the end. You're probably familiar with that at the end of your first paragraph. But for the rest of the first paragraph, I don't want you to waste time, writing like an inverted pyramid, writing really general ideas. Oh, Christianity is this ancient religion, has a long history, or there are many Christians on the earth today. No, go right into your argument. So your argument, for instance, the one I've chosen for you to use in this lecture as a as an example is, your argument will be, let's say you want to argue Christianity is not modern. It doesn't really belong in the modern world. Um, your first argument, then, your first stasis, what you want to set up as a stasis is something that's set, something that's fixed. So you want to write it in such a way that it seems fixed in my mind, in the reader's mind. You want to write that Christianity is modern. So you want to write against your own, the first words on your page will be again, the exact opposite, the strongest version of what someone would say if they disagreed with you. So you want to say Christianity is a very modern religion. Christians were at the root, or Christian ideas, even among atheists and even among Jews and people like Spinoza, who rebelled against Christian ideas, who created modern ideas that the human conscience should not be shackled, should not be following priests, and should not be following traditional kind of teachings, but should follow the facts that they could gather from the natural philosophy, or that every person, common person, should use reason to come up with their own logical account of the universe, and this account doesn't need God, doesn't need supernatural interventions and things. Even these people came out of this basically Christian idea. You want to say Spinoza still emphasized the individual person's choice, their moral conscience, free will. All those are actually Christian ideas, although Spinoza didn't give credit to them. If Spinoza had known more, for instance, of other non-Western philosophies, he might have recognized he drew that lineage from part of this Christian tradition. God has Adam and Eve at a tree, choosing between two things. The gospel, when it's offered to people, is up to their free will, is up to their choice. So Christianity is a very modern religion. The ideas of every person mattering, every person having a choice, every person being responsible for their moral actions. These are at the heart of Christianity. And when the Enlightenment takes this, when modern thinkers, even atheists or agnostics, take these ideas and create an enlightenment out of it, they're using Christian ideas to create an enlightenment. So that's your stasis, you see. That's a strong version of the argument you can destabilize. Then you start to destabilize it. You cause it trouble. You say, well, even though Christianity seems to be modern, there are reasons to think that it is not, actually. Hiding underneath its embrace of common people's conscience and moral choice is arguments for tradition, is arguments for following what's gone before, for following what priests or theologians teach you, or in the end, what's inescapable for any Christian is God. God tells you what's right in the end. Why one tree? Why not another tree? Because of God, right? Because of God's choice. These kind of the free choice is just an illusion. Actually, Christianity teaches that people are sinful, are unable to think for themselves, need God's help. It relies on supernatural intervention, and with no intervention, there's no way to have Christianity. You see, so then this is a stronger argument now, because you have already set up, I seem to be agreeing with you on the first part of your first paragraph, right? You set up the stasis. The next part of your first paragraph destabilizes, causes me to have doubts. And then finally, your thesis is going to be how you're going to argue. And that might change, but it should be based on the evidence. That should be very specific now, not just generally destabilizing, but maybe you are really fascinated by natural philosophy. You are really fascinated by science and the ways that science can cause issues with Christian themes, Christian ideas. So you say, now we've talked about free will, and we've talked about like how necessary is God. If God is a watchmaker, a good watchmaker, then you can be a Christian and modern at the same time. Your world is God, and you understand it. There's some destabilizing when we have these ideas that human beings can't really make choices for themselves, and then you're going to say, maybe my thesis is that in the end, especially because of all the things that are discovered by natural philosophy and by scientists, Christianity has a lot of trouble actually being truly modern, because it cannot embrace a number of scientific discoveries. It's very difficult for them to embrace. And of course, one of the places you might want to go then, so that's your thesis, right? So that's the stasis, destabilization, thesis. Now your evidence should, your body paragraphs as you're writing, the bulk of your essay should be body. And I want you again to prove that you can read this book and master it and use it at a high level. So for instance, you might say, okay, on page 857, you might put this whole thing in quotes, right? You can say, the only way, this is about Darwin, right? The only way Darwin's data made sense was to suppose that species battled for survival, and that evolution came when one slight adaptation of a species proved more successful than another in the battle, a process which he named natural selection. There was nothing benevolent about the providence which watched over the process. Reason was served her notice as the handmaid of Christian revelation, end quote, right? Okay, so break that apart for me. What's the quote saying, right? This is your body to prove you can really master and get into this text. You'd say you can just go, stage by stage, a kind of a deep reading, and why it supports your idea that Christianity is not modern. The only way Darwin's data makes sense. So basically, the root of Darwin's data is in natural selection. Is this battle? Is what they call a battle, and there's nothing benevolent. So benevolent means kind or good. There's nothing good about this. There's no providence. Providence is another Christian idea of God being over all nature, of nothing being left to chance, of everything moving in a good reason or good direction. There's nothing good about this. It's random, and in fact it's cruel. If anything, it's battle. The loser is dies. The loser dies out, becomes extinct, and the winner goes on to propagate and take over the earth. So at the very end, this is McCullough's writing, but reason was served her notice as a handmaid of Christian revelation. So the idea was that reason is supposed to help Christian revelation, it's supposed to be the handmaid. And now reason's gone. Reason cannot help. Reason is against revelation. So you see, then when you spell it out, then you were going to say, therefore Christians cannot really believe in reason. Christians cannot accept reason as their and if they can't accept reason, then where's logic and where are these enlightenment values? So Christianity is not modern, and you want to do more. You want to find a lot more quotes and evidence throughout the book. And if you want to talk about science, just focus on those sections that talk about science and unnatural and natural philosophy. Talk about from the beginning. You might trace it from the beginning to later. Like this Darwin. This might be actually one of your later paragraphs. In the beginning, there doesn't seem to be much problem. Spinoza loves the universe, and he thinks the universe is God. It seems to go together. Anyway, you see, this is a paragraph. This is a good essay that talks about the ideas, whether how they develop, or gives multiple evidence, and really sets up a complex picture for why, in the end, you have made this decision. Not a simple one, not just, oh, if you talk about God, you're automatically not modern, but a complex idea of how different people might have tried to fit God in, how God could be modern, but in the end, why you think the evidence is against it. And this is what I suggested to you a humanities education could do in one of my first lectures, is that you don't say there's only one right answer, but you don't give up and say there's no answer either. There's no right answer. Everybody can just say whatever they want. You take the complex data, you take like what's in this book, it's an example, but you take whatever data you have in when you're voting, when you're doing your jobs, you take that data and you make the best possible argument. You say, because of my values, because of these things, this is correct. This is my best answer for why this is correct. It doesn't mean it's for sure correct. It doesn't mean no one could argue against it. And in fact, I can give you strong arguments against it. But this is why I still think it matters. So that's what you could do for gender, for culture, for politics, and for modernity, or all these ideas. It's up to you to argue how you want to think about them and how they fit with the Christianity we've been learning about. And I want you to persuade me. I'm really open to and excited to read some of your essays about this. So I hope that's clear. I want to see a lot of evidence. I want you to primarily focus on the books. I want you to check with us if you're going to use extensively other sources. And I want you to persuade. I want you to really convince us that this is how the world works, or that your side is right. And I want you to start from the very first paragraph. Don't waste time. Don't talk about general things. Just go right into your argument. Show me what you're going to argue against. Show me why that might not be true. Give me a thesis, a little taste. Then spend a lot of paragraphs, all the body paragraphs. Give me the evidence for why you came to the conclusion that you did. In the end, just restate your conclusion, your thesis, for these reasons. For reason A, B, C, and D, the body paragraphs I covered, this is why it's so clear that Christianity really shouldn't be called modern, even though you could make a good argument that it is. It's really like something that's not really modern, that pretends to be, or that has a little aspect that is, but the body, it's like the tip of the iceberg is, or whatever, however you want to think about it. I'm not telling you, this is not my personal belief. I'm using this as an example. I hope that's clear. But there's an iceberg. This is the tip of the iceberg. It seems modern, and actually it's not. Or however you want to think about it, however you want your argument to go. So I hope that's clear. That is what I'm looking for with the midterm essay. And if you want, you might want to think about picking something you really like, because you may just expand on that for your final essay. Okay.